All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Producers Prospect Podcast with Bryce Hamilton, Chief Growth Officer, as well as Head of Business Development for Intellivisor Family Office, where we really provide family office services with financial planning, tax planning, estate planning, and exit planning. And as always, it's great to introduce you as the audience to what I would consider a very good friend of mine, Janine Thias, who is a financial advisor in Ohio, who I've come to know over the last probably 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years now.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of common, I will say, battle wounds, and some of which we're still recovering from. But as I think the saying goes, you really know somebody's character in the most challenging of times. And Janine and I have both been through those challenging times. And I will say, if that is an indication of her character, we're here with a remarkable woman. So, Janine, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Bryce.
It's a pleasure. Well, first of all, we need to establish where you are, because I know when I first met you, you were living in Maryland. And then next thing I know is you moved to Ohio. But for some reason, whenever I talk to you, you're in Oregon. And so where are you today, Janine?
I'm in Ohio today. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Ohio. I love it. And so what we're going to talk about today is something we really haven't talked about. And I think Janine is the perfect person to go through this with us. And that's talking about caring for our parents or elderly folks. As a lot of us are, as you know, most people who tune in are financial advisors or insurance agents or in the business. And I would venture to guess that most of us are at the very least in the second half of our career. And all of a sudden, we're now looking at the potential of having to be the caretaker of our parents. And Janine has lived that firsthand. And I asked her to come on because I wanted to share with us her firsthand experience on what it is like. Because in Janine's situation, the great news is that both of her parents are alive. I believe they're over 90 or at 90 years old right now.
Yeah, mom's 90 and dad's 92.
So, I mean, good news is they're alive.
Yeah.
Bad news is they're alive. And so now it's, as we get older, it gets harder. And they're in Oregon. So every time, when I said that you're from, you're in Oregon, it's because you're taking care of your parents in Oregon. Your business is in Ohio. You have history in Maryland. So you literally are all over the place. But before we get to that, I have to jump in, Janine, and just tell us about your background, because one of the things that and the first thing that I know about you and I've learned about you is you came up in the military. The military has been a big part of your life, and I believe you came from a military family, correct?
Yep.
So share with us just how did you get into the military, your family background, just kind of a little bit of a character sketch of where you come from.
So my dad was Air Force for 20 years. So my first 20 years, I was an Air Force brat, as we call them. And I ended up, he retired at the ripe old age of 39 and a half. And of course that means he didn't retire. He went on to do his profession in the private sector.
Okay.
So I was in college when he retired, and I was in pre-med, and I wasn't sure I really wanted to go to medical school at the time. And so he said to me one day, we're just having a conversation. He goes, "Why don't you go into the military? It's a great incubator."
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's a thought. So I interviewed at Ohio State for both the Air Force ROTC and the Navy ROTC. When we moved from Ohio, which was his last assignment at Wright-Patterson, to Oregon, we got there, and 2 weeks later, I had a check and a set of orders to report to Rhode Island.
Wow.
So I went to the Naval Science Institute. That was my introduction. And then you sign the papers that you're committing. So I was a junior. Committing to ROTC. I was the only female in my class. There were only 2 of us in the entire ROTC, 2 of us females. And
wait, in terms of the entire ROTC program?
Well, at Oregon State.
Okay, at Oregon State. That's remarkable.
But even then, there were not very many women at the time going active duty in the military. In fact, when I graduated, I was selected for naval intelligence. So I went to the school and I was expecting, so this was just an anomaly. I was expecting to be one of one or one of two women, and there were 11 women in my class. They never did that again because I guess we were a handful. But my first assignment, I was one of the first 5 women to deploy with an anti-submarine warfare squadron. So
Really?
yeah, so all these ladies, these younger ladies who think, oh, we got to break the ceiling. Oh, I'm a feminist. Sit down, baby girl, because you have no idea.
Right. The ceiling's broken.
Yeah. So I was one woman and 300 guys in the squadron. I was one of 3 women officers on the entire base. So you learn very quickly that, what helped me, I was very athletic. I could outrun half the guys because I ran track and cross country. So that was really cool. Yeah. So my parents had a lot of kids and they had 7 kids and they took in 8 more. So all guys, all brothers.
God.
And
really?
Yeah. There was never any money, but we have a tribe.
Right. Right.
So, you look back and you go, God, the things we did, we just did them because you needed to. There wasn't we all knew it was understood. We were all going to graduate college. It was just understood we would provide for our own lifestyles and that we would succeed.
Right.
That's just the way it was. And so I went to the Navy and 6 of my 8 brothers went to the Marines.
No kidding.
So yeah, I was being recruited heavily by the Marines, but I'm at the time, because I was always running with them and working out or whatever. And at the time, I'm like, you don't let us do any fun stuff. You're going to have me flying a desk. So when I went to the Navy, I got to fly a desk with a squadron. So
really?
So it was a great experience. Guys are funny as hell, as you know. And, I laughed every day. I mean, they beat on me as much as they beat on each other. So that's just the way it was.
It's their form of a compliment.
That's right. Yeah. So from that, you learn to thicken up the skin, which I already had pretty thick skin being with a bunch of brothers who were all athletes. And so you just move forward. And I had a lot of great experiences because in the military, typically you are put into a position where you have to show up and perform. And there are opportunities to take on more responsibility than most people at those young ages. So, and I had a range. Yes, I was in Intel, an analyst. I was in the Pentagon. I was at the Defense Intelligence Agency. I did have a stint in Manpower and Budget, which was an interesting experience. So, it was great. And you just learn to basically carry on and challenge. You don't sit back. And so I raised 4 kids. So 2 of them went to the military, one's still in the military.
Okay.
And I went, before I came into this business, a friend of mine who was a Navy Academy grad, he and his buddy like to flip companies. And he called me one day and he says, we need some leadership at this company. I'm like, what the heck are you getting me into?
Okay.
So I ended up being the director of the manufacture of smallpox vaccine after 9/11, which it's a story unto itself. But so I can tell you a lot about, what's really going on over there in the FDA. But I was very frustrated with the corporate situation.
Okay.
And my one brother that didn't go to the military became an advisor and has been a very good advisor for a long time. And he said, you need to come into this business because you care about people and there aren't enough people doing it right. So I came in.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually great advice. I would agree. You and I have an opportunity to come into contact with a lot of different advisors, and there's a lot of great ones out there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that sense of caring, the true vested interest in the client is, I unfortunately, it's unique, and I think it sets us apart. I know it sets you apart from the competition within your market. But having that care is remarkable. So tell me on that topic. Tell me a little bit about your practice. I mean, I've gotten to know it intimately. I know you're bringing Annika and Allison into the business. They've just now gotten licensed. Allie, Annika, awesome job. And what's that experience? Because, for a lot of us, our succession plan is our kids, our family, our nephews, our nieces. What has that experience been like for you?
Well, it's been it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, we have a pretty tight knit, and that's something that, speaking of caring, as parents, if you don't nurture
Mm-hmm.
the kids into the environment, they tend to rebel, and if there's no bumpers or whatever. But we have a great time. You got to maintain a sense of humor and they're funny as heck, but they already had careers
Mm-hmm.
and then approached me a couple years ago and said, we want to come into this business. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so there's this mentoring, but they're quick. And I mean, Allie was a professional artist, concept artist, has a
Mm-hmm.
very big resume. And Annika was in business, doing a lot of, I mean, she's amazing with tech and marketing and
Mm-hmm.
very quick study. And so it's actually a lot of fun. They have great senses of humor. They have a little, different personalities, kids do in a
Right.
family. And it dovetails very nicely. So,
I'm sure it's also a sense of pride seeing, your grown children, as you mentioned, they both have gone off, had successful careers, and now they're coming back to the family business, which is now a family business, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
But now getting to see them in a different light, in really, the way in which they carry themselves, the way in which they interact and learn, I'm sure has got to be a sense of pride and also a learning experience.
yeah. And you have to, and I've told them this since they were kids, and especially my sons, don't take things personally that aren't meant to be taken personally. And sometimes
Hmm.
you just got to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
And everybody makes mistakes, so you try to catch them early. But the gist of this business, as you know, is really taking care of the client and being receptive and communicative and listening well.
Hmm.
And so, they have different temperaments. And while Allie's very, very calm, kind of like the husband, Annika's like me on steroids, which is a little scary. So,
I would say.
but they mesh well. So, that's the emphasis: is use your talents.
Yeah.
Combine your talents, and then you have a very strong team. So, and actually, my nephew's in the business too now. So.
Yeah.
So, he's Marine Reserve pilot, and now flying for United. And he's like, okay, if I'm your back office, we need to talk.
That's
So,
right.
but
That's right.
but it's really, it's not so much a challenge as you would think. You
Hmm.
just have to communicate well.
Yeah, I would
And
imagine. And is there now, fortunately for you, your kids get along, or from what I've seen, they get along. They have a mutual respect,
yeah,
and as I've seen, they have skills that complement one another.
right.
And so you don't really have a clashing of talents, and you don't have a clashing of like, well, I want to do that, or I should do that. Like there is a really nice compliment, which has been a luxury for you, I'm sure. But at the same time, even though they came to you by, really wanting in, but I'm sure there's also been like a learning curve in getting them to buy in, right? Because they come from one generation of, whether it be technology or doing certain things, versus how, like, look, the thing that we get to do I mean, I can't remember, how long have you been doing in this business?
22 years.
22 years. So like we've both been north of 2 decades. We do it a certain way.
Yeah,
And I know if our kids were coming in, they're going to do it a different way, because if nothing else, they're our kids, right?
right.
What's that experience been like? I mean, I'm sure you have to have an open mind as well as them having an open mind, right?
Well, yeah, and it's a lot of discussion actually,
Hmm.
because I realize, I mean, from all the experience in the Navy, I mean, if you build a team, you're bringing different talents and different perspectives to the
Right.
mission.
Right.
So this is the mission. There are many ways to skin the cat.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that what I'm doing is the absolute way to do it, but let's talk about that. This is why I do what I do. If you can think of a way to do it better, well, let me know. And
Yeah.
and it's just, and there's some give and take because they're more tech savvy. I mean, I'm pretty tech savvy, but they're even more tech savvy.
Hmm.
So for them, just starting out, it's getting all I have to do is pull back a little bit. Okay, slow down, slow down.
Yeah.
Because they want to just go forward and just do it like do things right away. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. And it's great to be motivated, but you need to take some time to actually get some of this, which they know.
Mhm.
But
Right.
I mean, they're old enough to know. So and I waited because I didn't know if they were going to come in, but I waited until they asked
Mm.
because I figured, the life experience is really important
Yeah.
in what you bring. So, regardless of the profession, the life experience is what's really important. You're not stepping out as a 22-year-old and thinking you're
Mhm.
going to rule the world.
Right.
So, yeah.
And
So that
I have to imagine them now. There's obviously, to your point, of benefits of them joining the practice later in life versus right out of college or high school or what have you. Not to say that that's been they just have a different set of circumstances.
right.
And the fact that they came to you versus you trying to pull them in. What would you say is probably, perhaps an aha moment with them, or is it like anything new? There's, it's kind of like getting on a moving merry-go-round, right? Like you're not really sure where you're gonna land. It's going. You might you might fall down a little bit because everybody's new, everybody's working together, and it's also like the dynamic of like when we're done working, we're still family, right?
Right.
Did you have any like aha or thing that where, okay, now we got it? Is there an instance, or does it take time?
Well, I think for some people it might take time. They're learning the rhythms and the routines.
Hmm.
I think because we're family, we probably um, exchange more at all hours and
Yeah.
days. You
Yeah.
get like my former assistant, I would not bother her on a weekend.
Right.
You
Right.
but we're texting.
Yeah. With kids.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, okay, can you meet for an hour on Saturday? Let me know.
Yeah.
Oh, so and everybody's been pretty good that way. And I think in general, since everybody's gone virtual, that's
Hmm.
kind of the nature of business now.
Yeah, I would imagine, right?
I mean, I've had clients text me at 8 o'clock at night. I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? What? Seriously? You
Right.
know?
I mean, the nice thing is that, and I know not everybody does this, but you do make yourself accessible to your clients.
Yeah.
You do, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with something very important, very specialized, and over the years, and I've had the pleasure of sitting down in calls and conversations with a lot of your clients, and they adore you, they love you, they cherish the relationship that they have with you, but also they look at you as a friend as well as an expert, which I think is a gift, and I think it comes because you have such care and concern for them and their well being.
Yeah, and I think actually, it's kind of an off, whatever the left-handed compliment or whatever. One of my clients said to me, he came in, he goes, "I'm really sorry," and I go, "For what?" He said, "I don't read half your emails." And I looked at him, I go, "Why am I working so hard here?" And
Right,
he said, "Well, I know it's you, and you're taking care of it, and I trust you." And I'm like, "Okay, but if I really need your attention, you just
right.
I'm gonna call you."
I mean,
So
you're right though. It's like that is the ultimate compliment. Is I don't need to worry.
yeah.
I mean, and if you're able to take the worry away, that means you've really done a remarkable job.
Plus, I mean, I like all my clients.
You do.
I,
I know you do because I see your reaction and the way you light up when you talk about them. And it's been a lot of fun. Okay, Janine, let's pivot and let's talk about the other side of your family, your parents. And
yeah,
as I said before, the good news is they're alive. That you've had a great relationship with them, but now your mom's 90, your dad's 92, they live in Oregon, you're in Ohio, and the dynamics have changed. And as we were talking before, I said taking care of your parents or becoming a caretaker, it's not a date that we have circled on the calendar. It's not something that you really can prepare for unless you've gone through and fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, you and I have that in common is that we've been put in that position as caretaker. And I think that's another thing that I think has drawn us close together and as our friendship has grown is that respect and that we have for our loved ones, and making sure that we're the one that's there, because that's who we all want to be, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we want to be that person for them. But with that being said, your dad is a military guy. I would say, and how you have described him, stubborn is probably the best word I could say,
Well,
in terms of his nature, in of being flexible, right? Like, they want to live in their home.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because he just kind of follows mom's lead.
Mm,
And this is not uncommon because, my mom is a little more volatile
yeah.
at this point. And she was very adamant these last couple of years, I'm going to die in my home. We're going to die in this home. And I said, Mom, if you piss me off, you're going to die sooner. Because so just to let everybody know, with all the vaccines and everything else, my dad had a stroke in 22.
Mm,
Now he's a healthy guy. He was a marathon runner
mm-hmm,
and an overall runner, but he had a stroke. And then there was a series of back and forth, a couple of mini strokes and this, that, and the other thing. So from 22 to this year,
mm-hmm.
it was me flying back and forth to Ramrod. Now, I mentioned I had all these brothers, and I love my brothers. They're great, and they're a lot of fun, and they're funny.
Yeah.
And what I have noticed, and this is very common when you look up research and in general, there's a reason men and women are different.
Yeah.
If you look at all the caregivers out there, about 80% of them are women. They do tend to either quit a job or go to part-time to be able to care for parents or care for, a family member.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I notice is, as good as they are and they're very accomplished guys, they don't necessarily anticipate needs.
Okay.
And so I'm living there with them, and I'm making sure dad's okay, because he's also he can't hear for squat, and he's kind of oblivious. And you're acting as a buffer.
Right.
And then you're kind of, I've been very fortunate because they can still do all the ADLs,
Yeah.
activities of daily living. They can still do them, except dad cannot cook. He managed to stick a burrito in the microwave and burn the Jesus out of it.
It sounds like your dad may not have ever been able to.
Well, he could for a while, but
Okay.
he does have cognitive impairment.
Okay.
So he's having trouble, and this is common,
Yeah.
they can't figure something out technically. And you'll see, it's like, I don't know, they call it dementia. There's many forms of dementia.
Right.
So, because I can have a very deep philosophical, theological conversation with him, but he
Mm-hmm.
won't remember he just had breakfast.
Wow. Okay.
So that's what you're dealing with. Or somebody they'll ask you 10 times the same question, but you
Mm-hmm.
can still have a deep conversation about
Right.
something. So what I've noticed is just getting things done and protecting the people. I understand why they want to stay in their home,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the memories are.
Sure.
And for these people who are elderly like that, unless they're seriously engaged in some hobby or some club, or, they go to the senior center and they participate in activities, which
Mm-hmm.
many do,
Yeah.
what happens is there's no they have difficulty. There's no ability. They're not looking forward. Like, I'm looking forward to doing this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this challenge or whatever, or this hobby. They don't do that. And as a result, they tend to live in the past because that's what they know,
Okay.
or that's what they're comfortable with. And so they're, like my dad goes around and checks all the doors. It's a habit. Dad, I check the door. I got to check the door. Okay, check the door. you know? So, but you have to maintain a dark sense of humor. The other thing that's really important for people to realize is I would not leave an elderly person in a hospital by himself,
Oh, okay.
because the hospitals, even the good ones, the nurses don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to give personal care all the time.
Right.
And if you have somebody, so this is something I learned, is when you've had a stroke and you've recovered, and then you get a virus of some sort, a cold
Mm-hmm.
even, it can trigger stroke-like symptoms.
Really?
That's happened now 3 times. And so when I was in the hospital with him, I'm watching the nurses, I'm watching the food be delivered, and he was shaking so badly he couldn't put the scrambled eggs on the fork. So I made sure he ate.
Mm.
If I hadn't been there, nobody would have made sure he ate and that
Really?
he'd eaten. And so the person delivering the food would have just taken the tray away because, oh, apparently he wasn't hungry.
Right. Right.
But that's what happens.
That's what
So
happens.
it's not, it's not that necessarily things are bad. It's just that they're not, sometimes they're good at giving personal attention, but nobody's going to look after your family member like you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's I couldn't agree more. And I guess in that situation with respect to them feeding and getting the nutrients and what have you, I never had that experience or look or knew about that. But that's a really good point. Is having that person there to make sure that the little things, because those little things do end up making a big difference.
Well, and that's, it's a conversation I have with my brothers because they're like, oh, we should put them in assisted living. And I go, well, I understand why they don't want to go to assisted living. One, there are all these horror stories, even a
Hmm.
good place, right?
Yeah,
But there's nobody. What's really interesting, and it's at a connection level or even spiritual level of somebody, when you're safe. It's
yeah,
subliminal. And to go to a new place, your subconscious, you don't know if you're really safe.
right.
And so it's kind of like, I mean, I'm torn because I can't live there. My mother would love me to move in.
Yeah,
I go like, Mom, can't do that. I have a
no,
husband and done some
yeah.
kids and little grandkids. So it's, you're splitting yourself multiple ways. So you get help to come in
Hmm.
and the help is good and they like it and they're comfortable with her. And, you have to give them, it's okay for you to do this, this, and this, and this. And if Mom wants to buy wine, okay, I don't want to put you in the middle of that.
Right, right.
So, but that's the reality. And what a lot of people don't realize is the continuing care retirement communities are where a
Hmm.
lot of people are going. There aren't enough of them. There is actually a crisis that's happening in this country, or it's coming,
Yeah,
because the baby boomers are 70 plus, right?
yeah, they
I mean,
certainly are.
the youngest group is 62, roughly. Now you've got all kinds of situations where people are going to end up in that, and some are great and some are not so great. But there's a confusion too between do you if you have the money you go to CCRC or you're going to Medicaid or
Hmm.
you're on Medicaid once you run out of money. And so are you coming out of pocket to insure all this? To self-insure, or
Right.
are you going to get a policy? What does that look like? What should it look like? What are the parameters around how it works?
Hmm.
How much does it cost? That they're the varying features and just different care facilities. And 60% roughly of
Hmm.
caregivers in this country are foreigners.
Really?
Hmm. And depending on the group you use,
Hmm.
good could be not good, and where you end up. There is that look back for Medicare and Medicaid and having to pay, like you can't be on Medicaid
Hmm.
unless you are basically impoverished. So
Yeah.
right now I have a client who's 95. She's been getting 24/7 care.
Hmm.
She's running out of money really fast.
Because she didn't take the appropriate steps to
Right.
get
Well,
a policy or have some kind of coverage, or did she
and
self-insure?
yes.
Okay.
And so her niece is the heir. And I'm talking with her. I'm like, okay, what happens when she runs out of money? Well, then Medicaid will kick in, but you've got to argue with the Medicaid office,
Right.
you know. But in that case, this is what's really sad too, is that she's estranged from her two sons and her grandchildren. So she really is
Jeez.
alone
Mhm.
because she's in one state, her niece is in another state, and she's running out of money. So one of the questions I ask everybody is, who will be your advocate?
Yeah.
Because you don't just need a financial advocate, you need a healthcare advocate. Who's gonna look after you
Right.
to make sure that you're okay? Because everybody, depending on what kind of shape you're in,
Mhm.
um, even that, when things happen, a surgery, a heart attack. I just lost another friend. He was an estate planner that I used just Sunday morning, heart attack. So, uh, you know,
Fleeting.
so it's like things happen but nobody talks about what should happen next,
Right.
or few people talk about that.
Well, and
And
don't you get the sense that people, just assume that Medicare is gonna take care of this or take care of a lot of it?
right, they do. And Medicare, only, as you know, only covers the first 100 days.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some clocks that start, and then you run that clock, and then you're
Right.
on your own for a while. And then if you're out 60 days, that clock can start again. But you have to go and do battle.
Yeah. It's not, they're not going to come knock on your door
That's right.
and say, "Oh, we noticed that you need more money and that you've now been out for 60 days and that," like, they don't do that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to document, you have to advocate for yourself, you have to, and if you don't have anyone as your advocate, you could be, 80s, 90s fighting the fight by yourself, and it could be really tragic.
Yeah. And people need to understand that Medicare, Medicaid is run by the states.
Mhm.
So you have different states with different outcomes.
Mhm.
And if you go to Medicaid and then you go into the hospital, if you're in a Medicaid facility and you go to the hospital, when you get out of the hospital, you might go to rehab. But if you're going, they may move you to another facility because you
Right.
will your bed. So with so many people that are now the baby boomer generation looking at some type of care, you just need to be aware that you may have to, fight for the type of care you think you should have.
Yeah.
So, depending on what that looks like.
I mean, so obviously you've learned a lot going through this with your parents. I mean, and I got to imagine you've learned a lot even being in this business. And one of the fortunate things about our business is it's easy to find a lot of education on these topics. There's, whether it's conferences we go to, conference calls we're on, white papers, podcast, whatever. There's a lot of information out there. But it's one thing to know data, to study the data and study the, trends or what have you. But to walk into the living room of your parents or into the bed, it just takes on a different shape. It's not data anymore. It's dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the part where, and I'm assuming if people are listening that they have the best intentions for their parents. They have the best intentions for, as you said, making sure that they are balancing that independence, right? Because that's really hard. I know, and we started to talk about that a little bit, but in your experience now, would you say that that's the hardest part about being the caretaker of your parents, is that balance of respecting your parents' independence while still recognizing they have growing needs?
So, yes, and this is a great question to discuss. People should discuss this because here's the really important part. Sometimes you have to let people do what they think they can do
Mhm.
because that's a self-worth issue.
Mm,
And sometimes it's okay to let them struggle because the struggle is what's keeping them alive.
I got it.
A lot of times. Now, that doesn't
Right.
work for everybody, but,
Right.
here's my dad. He's supposed to do, and when I was home here recently, I'm putting him through his paces. Okay, Dad, you got to do 2 sets of squats. You got to do
I
your
love it.
squats. Here's the weights. Here's, we're doing this, and
Yeah.
bands and everything. And he loves to do that. He just forgets.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure. And by the way, what military background with the squats and I mean, just the way you said squats, I was like, "Oh my god, I think I like, let's put a medal on." I love it.
So, but that's they're still doing stairs. So I have a
Okay.
lot of people who say, "Oh, I want to live on one level." There are studies of different populations that have to go up and down hills just
Mhm.
as they have to go to the store or they whatever, and they walk on like in Italy,
Yeah.
Japan. So these people have longevity because they keep moving,
Yeah. The
and
moving is big.
moving is big. And I tell people all the time, "You stop moving, you are toast."
Yeah.
And then you become a needy, you become whatever. But the health, I mean, to me, good health is good wealth.
Unequivocally.
Health is wealth. And that message is starting to get out there because they do have senior activities. You can do exercises in your chair,
Mhm.
which, you need weight bearing for crying out loud. But
Mhm.
luckily, both parents are advocates of, okay, we're going to go walk. We're going to, and my mom was dragging him around the block. I'm like, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's too far.
Right.
But I go down to that tree and come back and then repeat it later, things like that. But yeah, you really do need to let them do what they think they can do. But part of the reason people want them, you don't want to have to worry about them. That's why they want them to go to assisted care or have people come in. And there are a lot of groups that do custodial care. And so when you start looking at different policies, and Medicare, you have to look at whether it's custodial care, which is I'm helping you do things, versus skilled nursing care, which is you can't do stuff, so I have to feed you, or I have to bathe you, or I have to, because I have a client that's going through that right now too. So it's I mean, there's a lot of attitude that, do you have a positive attitude about this? I mean, nobody wants to get old, but it's inevitable.
Right.
And
I mean, it's what happens.
right. So what do you want that to look like? Which a lot of people have trouble, projecting.
So talk to me about the planning perspective of this and like I said it earlier, this isn't something, it's something that you can plan for, but it's not necessarily something you can put on the calendar. So what are some of the things that you found that outside of, the personal touches like you've lined out and keeping their independence and staying active. I was actually laughing when you're starting to say that because I just learned that my 80-year-old mom is now really into jumping. And I'm like, yeah, I was literally, and by the way, she thought like the best time to have this conversation is while we were eating dinner at her 80th birthday party. And she's like, "I'll show you." And I'm like, "Mom, I'm good. I'm okay."
I'm okay.
But you're right. I mean, she takes this Pilates class and they have them doing these jumps because to your point, the getting off your feet, getting airborne, whether it's going up hills or stairs or jumping, it increases bone density, it increases flexibility. Like the small muscles are moving the big muscle. Like there's so much benefit for going up and down that people really need to look, and it's a basic thing. It's not something that it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost the trainer. If anything, maybe just hold on to something, but being active is going to help you out physically and mentally. But aside from that, where and what can we do from a planning perspective, whether it's us aging ourselves and the care that we want, or perhaps looking ahead and helping our parents into some of the planning they can do?
Well, it would be really nice if people kind of got a grip on what is really important in
Mm,
your life. Things are not necessarily important. They become less important as you get older. But if you came from a childhood where you had nothing,
mhm,
and for a long time had nothing, then you tend to hang on to those things because they're yours and you have control over them,
right.
you think. But if you don't kind of get rid of the stuff you don't need, never have used in the last 5 or 10 years, you're leaving that job to whoever is left behind. And that's kind of the battle right now with my mom is, can we just get rid of this stuff that you haven't used in 10 years rather than me having to do it all when you pass? Because that's part of the planning is just, you take a look at what you have and because typically, as you know, in this business, you see families just fall apart after the matriarch or the patriarchs die.
Yeah,
And
it's unfortunate.
yeah, or they're fighting over, whatever resources there are. And that's really unfortunate. So if you are thinking about planning a legacy, sit down and plan the legacy.
Mhm.
Realize, I mean, my mother said, "Oh, I want to, I want to be fair." And I said, some equality thing. I said, "Mom, just realize that fair is not equal and equal is not fair. Just
I love it.
whatever you're going to do, we're all fine. We don't need your stuff. Just map out what you want to have happen. And we're all okay with it." There are some families that aren't that together. So they, everybody's scrabbling for whatever money there
Mhm.
is or things. But, start planning out where you want these things to happen, because then it just takes it off your plate and you don't have to worry about it. Some people just aren't that organized, don't want to be that organized. It's too emotional.
Mhm.
So that's something you're always dealing with is the emotional part. And then if you have a dementia on top of that, that's the bigger challenge is because you can have complete personality changes. And that, like, I have a friend whose mother is just vicious. And I said,
Mm.
what I've learned is you can't take anything personally. You just can't.
No.
It's just the way it is. And
Yeah.
one of my sisters-in-law said when both parents were really sick and I was doing 24/7 care, she said, "You're really handling this well." I go, "Well, as long as I work out, I'm not homicidal."
Right.
So, but if I know what I'm dealing with, I can deal with it. And I can't change it. It is what it is. So when you're really trying to help somebody walk through this, obviously you have to be respectful, but at some point you are taking over the decision making. And so,
And so I got to imagine that, and now that you're going through it, seen friends, family, and clients go through it as well, is what I'm gathering from what you've learned from one is you got to have the conversation.
you have to have a
You got to
conversation.
have those conversations when they are lucid, when they're in the right minds, that that they're. So there really is no such thing as too early for that conversation.
Right.
One of the things I've found, and I'm sure you have as well, is that the estate planning conversation can expedite that, because you can kind of, not to say that it's always about the business, but at the end of the day, the business is kind of what drives this. And so, and fortunately, that's one of the services, that we collectively provide for our clients is that estate planning. But being able to not only have your financial affairs in order with all the appropriate documents, but to have personal conversations like that so that that you can carry out what they want.
Well, and that's the really tough thing to sometimes for people to see. There were a small group of us that swam together, me and a bunch of guys again.
Shocker. Shocker.
Yeah. And one of them was an attorney. And in 2020, his wife, she was 63 years old. She was a doctor, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Really?
And there was another woman. So there was the two of us and these like five guys. And it was the Old and Busted Club. And he had to put her in memory care. And
Okay.
he told my buddy, the other woman, at one point, he said, when I had to put her there, I went home and cried for 3 hours because
Really?
who saw that coming?
Yeah.
In retrospect, you say, oh, now some things make sense because the person wasn't quite there or was doing something. So if you start to detect that, you seriously need to walk through what you want to have happen before it gets to the critical point. She passed away 2 years ago.
Mm.
So, and from everything I read and some doctors I talked with, if you get Alzheimer's early, you don't tend to live like 15 years or 10 years. You might live 4, but it's, that's devastating. So
It is.
and who plans for that? So that's the conversation is what do you want to have happen if or when? And getting people to talk about the decisions around the money, to me, those decisions are as important as the money. And if you're not having those conversations, it just is going to make it more difficult for everybody. And if kids are involved, well, that just adds to the chaos. But yeah, I mean, it's, we do have a situation where outsourcing care is going to be more challenging. Even though there are a lot of 55 plus places being built and the CCRCs are being built like crazy, people still primarily want to be in their homes.
No, I would agree with you. I think that's something that people cherish. As I watch as my mom gets older, turned 80 this year, and thankfully in amazing health. You never would know that she's 80. And I know we could say that about a lot of baby boomers because of how they've lived their life. I mean, let's face it, this is a generation, and you're a part of it. I'm 53, so I don't get the honor of being a part of the club. But watching it firsthand, your generation put Gerber baby food and Pampers on the map when you were all born. You made Richard Simmons famous with the health club phenomena. You literally saved Harley Davidson when you guys were turning 40 because you were all having a midlife crisis on the verge of them going bankrupt, and now they're a thriving company. And so to your point, the lifestyle that perhaps the previous generation is nothing like what the baby boomer generation is going through or going to go through in terms of retirement. Is they're more active, they are coming into this healthier, they're coming into this more informed and educated, not necessarily, let's just say informed. There's probably some we need to, we live in the great information age. Not all the information is, applicable,
That's
but
right.
whatever. And so, having somebody like yourself as a confidant who can balance that personal interest with the financial and the concern that needs to be had to make sure that affairs are in order, and to the lovely point that your client said, whether it was a passive or intentional compliment, is just to know that you are there, and you'll take care of it, is probably one of the best compliments you could ever receive.
Well, and it's doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
In our culture, this is I think and maybe this is a good way to close this. Not to get too religious, but there is the honor thy father and mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always a big advocate of I did not want to outsource raising my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed my career. What we're finding is it's too easy to outsource something we really should do, because it's not just for them, it's also for you, in the giving. And I think in some ways, a lot of our culture has lost that. Families used to take care of their elderly.
They did. You're
And,
exactly right.
and in other cultures that happens, like in the Japanese, that's who takes care of it's family.
Mm-hmm. In
So,
fact, it's
and
an honor to do it.
yeah, yeah. So, and I totally realize that if somebody's very acrimonious, or you don't like your parents, or whatever the reason is, it makes it even more difficult.
Yeah.
But,
So
you know,
if nothing else, be nice to your parents.
yeah, they hopefully did a good job. I know some don't, but
Right.
but the thing that you don't want to get to be 60 years old and go, oh my gosh, I realized I didn't do a good job at nurturing family.
Right.
Because now who's going to look after me? Because it's not going to be your friend.
No.
And
No.
there are a lot of single women or childless couples. And this is going to be an interesting situation for the culture.
Right.
So,
Having the conversation is just imperative.
yeah,
You've definitely you've exemplified that, and going through it with your family, and your parents, and managing the juggling act of your brothers, and because being a daughter versus being a son, there's you each carry their own unique skill set and empathy and ability, um, and I'd like to just close with, or kind of near what we're talking near close with of what we're talking about, is what is what's something that you would is there anything else that you want to share with respect to things that we need to be doing, looking out for, handling, as I mentioned, obviously everything that you can provide from a service standpoint. We talked about estate planning, we talked about financial planning, and I think in a roundabout way, to and I hate to labor or harp on the client who said that everything is good because you're there. To be able to be that one contact, that one point of contact when they really need you, and being able to have access and control because everything is integrated into one place.
right.
I got to imagine it's a significant, it's very empowering relative to when you started in this business.
Well, and that's a good segue. One of the reasons I came into the business is because, well, there were two things. The guy that was our advisor at the time,
Mhm.
nice guy. I coached his kids in swimming, really nice guy. But when we were sitting in the office, he's talking to my husband. and
Ah,
and he's talking all up here about the market and economy and whatever. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, apparently you don't know my background. But
right.
but it's like, what does all of that have to do with us? So what I think is very common, and it's not just in this industry, it's many places in the culture, we don't really listen. Everybody's trying to have an impact or make an impact instead of just listening. So we're not talking past each other.
Yeah.
And then the other reason I came in is my grandfather was swindled out of all of his savings by
No kidding.
somebody who came through the area. He lived in Carlsbad, California at the time, and that this guy came through that development and made friends with all these older people and took all their money.
Really?
Yep. So we found out when the bank called my dad and said, "Hey, he's trying to take money out of his account and there's none there."
Jeez.
So grandpa came to live with us for a while. And I mean, I was already, I was in the Navy, but I had gone to the reserves and I had little kids by that
Okay.
point. But, it's just, and that's so common. It's really,
Yeah.
it's so I'm constantly, because I've had clients say, "What do you send me an email and go, what is this?" I go, "It's phishing."
Okay.
Delete.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, and I think what's lost sometimes in our culture, especially the younger generations, and this happened when one of the times my dad was in the hospital. The doc comes in, he's a young guy, he's the surgeon, and he's talking 90 miles an hour.
Okay.
And my dad's sitting over here and he's talking over here. And I'm like, "Doc,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. You're talking to an, at the time, 88-year-old. Slow down, speak conceptually." So he
Right.
gets what's
Right.
happening. But I think people forget that the older generation is not tech savvy.
They're not.
You do need, I mean, we have continuing ed we have to do all the time that talks about dealing with seniors. You can see it when you talk with them. They don't process or follow as fast. And we're all talking like, at warp speed. They can't. And they're just going to nod their heads because they don't want to look stupid.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. And to your point earlier, just being able to listen is really is such a value.
yeah. Because
Being
I mean, just in general,
hmm
listening to people. I think too many people aren't really heard because everybody's on an agenda.
Right. It
So,
is.
so
It
that's
is. Okay, Janine. I have two more questions for you.
okay.
And I've really enjoyed our time chatting. I hope our listeners are grasping what we're sharing with them. But second to last question. You've served our country. You've guided clients through, many of life's biggest financial decisions. And now you find yourself, helping lead your own family through one of its most challenging situations. You're onboarding your kids into your family, and at the same time, you're being super mom, super daughter, taking care of your parents. I mean, by the way, I gotta say, to be able to do what you're doing, you have to have military training. I feel like to be able to be good. But what is and bear with me if I get a little personal here, but what has this journey taught you about, what truly matters the most, whether it's the leadership that you have taken, the love that you have for your family, but what truly matters, like, what does truly matter most when you're doing this? I know you talked about listening, I know you talked about being there in the little things, but if you could put a bow on it for us, it'd be great.
Well, everybody, there's a huge push now for longevity. Like you
Mm,
got to take the right peptides, and you've got to
but yeah,
this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I'm listening to those guys, and I'm kind of laughing. But what is the biggest factor for immortality? Everybody wants to be immortal.
right,
I don't, because at 120, you've seen all there is to see. Humans really haven't changed
right,
in millennia. It's really the impact you have is the ability to make a difference, even a very simple thing
mhm,
for somebody. And it's the listening, it's the helping, it doesn't have to be extraordinary.
right,
But I think a lot of people don't slow down enough to be able to do that sometimes. And whether it's a client or a family member, you got to slow down enough to have that interaction. Otherwise, we're just off rushing and, and actually there's a bunch of studies. There was a study recently on young Gen Z young men. And what was more impactful for them? Was it money, chasing money, or was it community or connection?
Mm-hmm.
And it was connection. It was connection. And that's where I think a lot of people miss that until you're older and you go, oh, crap.
Yeah.
I didn't take the time to make those connections,
Right.
So that's really important. The money will come, the money, and if you have money, it can't just be about the money.
Right.
Money's important. We need
It
it
is.
to, and doing the right things with it is important. But in the end, it really comes down to the impact you have on a client, on a family member, on a friend, wherever you are.
I
Well,
don't think I could say it any better. And speaking from a personal place like you do, it resonates. And I think Ferris Bueller famously said, "If you don't slow down, you might miss something."
yeah,
And who knew what a great philosopher he would become, but he was so true.
that's right.
So Janine, I do this on my podcast. I end it, and it's extremely appropriate because of the subject matter that we talked about. And I apologize if I get personal here, but I think when you do this, it's easy. It's easier to understand who each of us are. And so I'll ask you this, like I ask everybody: if your parents were listening to this podcast right now, what would you want them to know?
That they are really cared for, that people love them.
That's beautiful, Janine.
But
It's
everybody wants that.
They do, but the fact that you are able to give that to them, the fact that I'm sure that they realize that they know that. Janine's mom and dad, if you're listening, I hope you are. You got an amazing daughter, and and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Thank you.
And I'm and I'm really grateful that you came on today, that we talked about some of really the most important stuff in life, that connection, the relationship that we have with the ones that we love, making sure that their integrity is protected, being there, how to show up for them, how to listen. Sometimes it's the reason why we got two of these and one of these, is there's such value in that. And I can't thank you enough for being open and being honest and candid with your relationship with your kids, your daughters. I've had such a pleasure getting to know them and talking about your parents. So thank you
Yeah,
so much, Janine,
yeah,
for
I
your
appreciate it.
friendship
And
and
for
being
all
here.
the oldies out there, you do have to stay in shape because your grandkids are terrorists. At
I love
least
it.
mine are.
Yeah, I love it, Janine. There's no better way to sign off with that. So thanks so much. As always, we appreciate everyone listening. Hope you learned something from this. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks so much, Bryce.